Our two-story house in Millbrook, a sleepy little hamlet, wasn't beautiful, but it was home. Despite our lack of swimming pool luxury, my sister Jane and I were never without the support of our parents, who were both teachers at the local school. Somehow, they always managed to find a method to make a teacher's compensation go farther. To put it simply, Jane was my best friend, my older sister, and everything else I lacked. She was like a spark that ignited every place she stepped into, in contrast to my preference for the solitary companionship of literature and sketching pads. As far back as I can remember, my sister and I used to play pretend to be explorers or princesses, and climb the ancient oak tree in our garden. Before our paths began to separate, those were easier days. Our dissimilarities became more apparent as we matured. Jane was the antithesis of me. She was gregarious, gifted, and seemed flawless in every respect. She was a basketball superstar in addition to being the star of every school play, writing poetry that moved our English teacher to tears. At the same time, I was simply there, the reserved individual who prefers to spend her lunch breaks in the library engrossed in a book rather than braving the bustling restaurant. At least in public, our parents never showed favoritism. They were just as pleased over Jane's successes as they had been over my respectable marks and understated achievements. However, there was an underlying consensus that Jane was meant for bigger things. As the admission letters began to arrive, Jane's acceptance to Riverside University, one of the state's most distinguished institutions, came as no surprise. The day she received her letter is a date I'll never forget. Because it was so wonderful, Mom and Dad started crying. "Our baby's going to Riverside," Mom yelled out as she embraced Jane tightly. "We always knew you were special," Dad remarked, reaching out to relatives over the phone. "Were you alerted? Jane received a full academic scholarship to attend Riverside." We started to really diverge from one another at that point. We still love each other, yet paths diverged due to the inevitable forces of life. While Jane headed for the city, I lingered in our childhood home, still searching for my place in the world. The challenges that would later test our sisterly bond would have been beyond my wildest dreams. That a single golden ring would shatter everything we'd built over the years and force me to question everything I thought I knew about family, trust, and forgiveness. The phone calls home from Jane became a weekly ritual of success stories and achievements. Each time I'd sit at the kitchen table, watching Mom's face light up as Jane shared her latest triumph at Riverside. "Did you hear?" Mom would gush to anyone who'd listen. Jane's research paper was published in the University Psychology Journal. She's only a sophomore, and she's maintaining a 4.0 GPA while doing all this extra research. Dad would chime in. "That's our girl." Spent those 2 years after high school working at the local diner, saving what I could for community college. When I finally enrolled at Millbrook Community College, my parents managed to smile and say, "That's nice, dear." It wasn't Riverside, but it was something. "You know, Jane was on local TV again yesterday," Mom announced during dinner one evening. They interviewed her about her research on childhood development. She looked so professional. "That's great," I mumbled, pushing my peas around my plate. I worked hard at my studies. I really did. But somehow getting an A+ in Introduction to Business didn't quite measure up to Jane's published papers and television appearances. My achievements were like candlelight next to her spotlight. After graduation, reality hit hard. While Jane was already establishing herself at Preston Medical Center as a rising star in their psychology department, I was dropping off resumes at local businesses with no callbacks. That's how I ended up working at Aunt Sarah's store as an assistant administrator. She took me on with that look of pity I was getting used to seeing. "It's just temporary," Aunt Sarah said, showing me around, "until you find something more suitable for someone with a degree." Then came the news that changed everything. Jane called one Sunday evening, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Mom, Dad, I met someone," she squealed over speakerphone. "His name is Michael, and he's a lawyer at Blackwell and Associates. His family owns half the buildings downtown." I watched my parents exchange knowing looks of approval. Of course, Jane would find someone as successful as she was. "He's taking me to Paris next month," Jane continued. "His family has an apartment there. Can you believe it?" "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Mom exclaimed while Dad beamed with pride. I sat there in my old sweatpants, still living in my childhood bedroom, making minimum wage at my aunt's store. The contrast couldn't have been starker. Jane, the successful psychologist dating a wealthy lawyer, and me, the underachieving sister who couldn't seem to get her life started. "When do we get to meet him?" Mom asked eagerly. "Soon. He's taking me to that new French restaurant this weekend, but maybe next week we could come for dinner." I excused myself from the kitchen before they could see the tears welling up in my eyes. It wasn't that I wasn't happy for Jane. I was. But each of her successes somehow felt like they were highlighting my failures. Every step forward she took seemed to push me 2 steps back in comparison. Holidays became a showcase of Jane's exciting life. She'd sweep into our parents' house like a celebrity, bringing stories of important clients, breakthrough therapy sessions, and glamorous dates with Michael. And then the CEO himself thanked me in front of the entire board, she'd say over Thanksgiving dinner while I quietly passed the mashed potatoes. "Tell him about that conference in Boston, honey," Mom would prompt, beaming with pride. I'd sit there in my work clothes from the store, still living in my childhood bedroom, because minimum wage doesn't get you your own apartment in this economy. Even my aunt's employee discount couldn't help me save enough to move out. Then came the announcement we all knew was coming. It was during Christmas dinner when Jane stood up, Michael beside her, both grinning ear to ear. "We're getting married," she squealed, extending her left hand to reveal a stunning gold ring with a diamond that caught every light in the room. "It's been in my family for generations," Michael explained proudly. "My great-grandfather gave it to my great-grandmother in 1925. Mom burst into tears of joy. Dad opened his best bottle of wine. I forced a smile while something heavy settled in my stomach. The next few months were a whirlwind of wedding preparations. Jane was at the house constantly, turning our modest home into wedding planning central. Every surface seemed covered with bridal magazines, color swatches, and guest lists. One Saturday in early spring, I had a rare day off. I was sprawled on my bed with my worn copy of Pride and Prejudice when I heard Jane and Mom in the garden below my window. "These roses will look perfect for the reception," Jane was saying. "We should plant more along this fence." "Careful with your rings, sweetie," Mom cautioned. "Those thorns can catch on anything." "You're right," Jane replied. "This glove keeps catching on it. I'll just put it here on the bench for now." I returned to my book, half listening to their chatter about flower arrangements and table settings. The afternoon sun was warm through my window, and I was just getting to my favorite part when I heard Mom's voice. "We should get more fertilizer if we're planting all these new roses. Let's run to the garden center." "Good idea," Jane agreed. "Chris, we're going to the store. Be back soon." I mumbled an acknowledgement, too engrossed in my book to really pay attention. The house felt quiet except for the distant sound of birds in the garden. When they returned, the peace was shattered by Jane's panicked voice. "Mom, Mom, the ring. It's gone." I looked up from my book at the commotion. Through my window, I could see Jane and Mom frantically searching around the wooden bench, pushing aside gardening tools and flower pots. "It was right here." Jane's voice was getting higher with panic. "I put it right here on the bench." "Don't worry, honey. We'll find it," Mom assured her, but I could hear the worry in her voice. "It has to be here somewhere." They searched until the sun started to set, combing through every inch of the garden, but the ring was nowhere to be found. That's when I first saw it in their eyes. When they looked up at my window, that flicker of suspicion would soon grow into something much darker. With shaking hands, Jane dialed Michael's number. I could hear his voice through the phone from across the room, growing louder with each word. "What do you mean you lost it?" His voice boomed through the speaker. "That ring has been in my family for 4 generations. My great-grandmother wore that ring through 2 world wars." "I'm so sorry," Jane sobbed. "We'll find it, I promise." "You'd better find it." The violence in his voice made me flinch. "I don't care what it takes. That ring is irreplaceable." After she hung up, Jane turned to me, her face twisted with an expression I'd never seen before. "You took it, didn't you?" "What?" I felt like I'd been slapped. "Jane, I was in my room the whole time." "Exactly?" She screamed, mascara running down her cheeks. "You were the only one here. Christina, if you took the ring, you need to return it right now," Mom said, stepping forward, her face hard. "I didn't take anything," I said, my voice cracking. "I swear." "Then you won't mind if we search your room," Dad said, already heading for the stairs. I followed them up to my bedroom, watching helplessly as they tore it apart. They rifled through my drawers, emptied my jewelry box, flipped my mattress, and dumped out my purse. Books scattered across the floor. Clothes were strewn everywhere. Even my private diary was read, page by page. "It has to be here somewhere," Jane muttered, throwing my sweaters onto the floor. Hours of searching turned into days, then a week. Each day the accusations grew worse. "Just admit it." Jane cornered me in the kitchen one morning. "We all know you took it because you're jealous. You can't stand that I'm getting married while you can't even get a date." "Jane, please." "Look at you," she spat. 27 years old, living with Mom and Dad, working a pathetic job that Aunt Sarah gave you out of pity. "You're a loser, Christina, and you couldn't stand to see me happy." Mom stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "We're going to call the police if you don't return it." "Go ahead," I shouted back, finally breaking. "Call them. I have nothing to hide because I didn't take your precious ring." Each word was like a knife cutting deeper than the last. The worst part wasn't the accusations or the threats. It was the look in their eyes, the absolute certainty that I was guilty, that I was capable of betraying my own sister out of jealousy and spite. Word spreads fast in a small town. Within days, my parents' version of events had reached every corner of Millbrook. At the grocery store, former neighbors avoided my gaze. At church, people who'd known me since childhood suddenly found reasons to sit in different pews. I was restocking shelves at my aunt's store when I heard her voice behind me. "Christina." Aunt Sarah's tone made me freeze. "We need to talk." In her small office, she didn't even offer me a seat. "Your mother called me this morning." "Aunt Sarah, please." She held up her hand. "I took a chance on you when no one else would, and this is how you repay me. By stealing your sister's engagement ring?" "I didn't." "Clean out your locker and turn in your keys." Her voice was ice. "I won't have a thief working in my store." The walk home felt like a death march. Maybe Mom and Dad would finally see how this was destroying my life. Maybe they'd realize I would never do this. I found them in the kitchen. "Aunt Sarah fired me," I said, my voice small. Mom didn't even look up from her coffee. "Pack your things." "What?" "You heard your mother," Dad said. "We want you out by tomorrow morning." The room started spinning. "You're kicking me out. Where am I supposed to go?" "Maybe you should have thought about that before you stole from your sister." Mom finally looked at me, her eyes harder than I'd ever seen them. "You brought shame to this family, Christina." I can't even look my friends in the face anymore. "I'm your daughter," I whispered. "No daughter of mine would do what you've done." Her words cut like glass. "You have until morning." I stumbled upstairs in a daze, pulling my old gym bag from the closet. How do you pack up a life in one bag? Which pieces of yourself do you choose to take? Clothes went in first, enough for a week, maybe two. One pair of sensible shoes, my laptop wrapped in a sweater. Then came the harder choices. The books that had been my friends when I had none. Pride and Prejudice, Jane Eyre, Little Women. Stories of other women who had to find their way in a hostile world. Through it all, I couldn't stop crying. These walls had heard my first words, seen my first steps. This room had been my refuge through every storm of my life. Now it was just another place I wasn't welcome. My phone buzzed with messages from old friends. I can't believe you would do this. And how could you? Don't contact me again. Sitting on my stripped bed, surrounded by the remnants of my life, I realized there was nothing left for me in Millbrook. Every bridge was burned, every door closed. Whatever I was going to become, it wouldn't be here. I had to leave, not just this house, but this town, these memories, this life that had become a prison of accusations and distrust. Somewhere out there, I had to believe was a place where I could start over. A place where no one knew me as the sister who stole the ring, the daughter who betrayed her family, the girl who wasn't good enough. At 3:00 a.m., while staring at my phone's dwindling contact list, I remembered Rachel. We'd been close in college before life pulled us in different directions. My fingers shook as I dialed her number, praying she still used it. "Chris," her voice was groggy with sleep. "What's wrong?" The whole story poured out of me between sobs. When I finished, there was a long pause. "I have a spare room," she said finally. "I'm in Portland now. It's not much, but it's yours if you want it." I checked my bank account. $342.17, just enough for a one-way bus ticket to Oregon and maybe a meal or two. "When can you come?" Rachel asked. "Tomorrow," I whispered. "I have to leave tomorrow." The bus ride took 2 days. I spent most of it staring out the window, watching the familiar landscapes of my life fade into unknown territory. My gym bag sat on my lap like a life preserver. Everything I now owned contained in one small space. Rachel was waiting at the station, just like she promised. She hugged me without hesitation, and for the first time in weeks I felt human again. "The store where I work is hiring," she said as we drove to her apartment. "It's just retail, but it's something." I started the next day. The store manager took one look at my business degree and my desperate eyes, then handed me a name tag. "You start on Register 3. I threw myself into the work like it was a lifeline. Every shift, every sale, every minute was 1 minute further from Millbrook and the wreckage I'd left behind. When other employees complained about long hours, I volunteered to stay longer. When they grumbled about difficult customers, I took them on with a smile. 3 months in, they made me a floor supervisor. 2 months after that, assistant manager. By the 8-month mark, I was managing my own department. "You're different from most people we promote," my district manager said during my review. "You have hunger." He was right. I was hungry, not just for success, but for vindication, for proof that I could be more than what my family thought I was. The day I signed the lease on my own apartment was the day I finally felt free. It was small, just a studio with a kitchenette, but it was mine. No one could tell me to leave. No one could search through my things. No one could question my right to be there. I changed my phone number that same day, deleted every social media account, erased every digital footprint that could lead back to Millbrook. Rachel thought I was being extreme. She didn't argue. "They're still your family," she said once carefully. "No," I replied, unpacking boxes in my new place. "Family believes in you. Family stands by you. They stopped being my family the day they chose not to believe me." At night, in my new bed, in my new life, I sometimes wondered about them. Was Jane married now? Did Mom still garden? Did Dad still read the paper every morning at the kitchen table? But wondering was dangerous. Wondering led to doubting, and doubting led to that dark place where I questioned everything, including myself. So I focused on work, on building something new, on becoming someone who couldn't be dismissed or discarded, someone who didn't need anyone else's approval or belief, someone who could survive being erased from her own family story. Despite my best efforts to move forward, there were nights when curiosity got the better of me. On those nights, I'd ask Rachel to check Jane's social media accounts from her phone. She got married, Rachel told me one evening, scrolling through photos. Big white dress, church wedding. Your parents look happy in the pictures. I nodded, pretending the information didn't cut like a knife. A year later, she's pregnant, Rachel reported, showing me a photo of Jane cradling her belly. Michael's hand protectively placed over hers. She looked radiant. For years, it was just me, building my new life in Portland, while getting occasional glimpses of my old one through Rachel's phone screen. For years, I watched my family's life continue without me, through carefully curated photos and posts that never mentioned the missing daughter, the lost sister. Then came the call that changed everything. Chris, Rachel's voice was breathless. You need to see this. She sent me a screenshot of Jane's latest post. To my sister, Christina, I'm sorry. I was wrong. If anyone knows where she is, please help me find her. I need to make this right. Please share this post. Help me find my sister. I stared at the words until they blurred. It's probably some kind of trick, I said finally. I don't think so, Rachel replied softly. Look at the comments. Your parents are there too, begging you to contact them. My hands shook as I read their comment. Mom, please come home. Sweetheart, we need to talk to you. Please give us a chance, Dad said. After 4 years of silence, their words seemed surreal, but something in their desperation felt genuine. I called the old house number, half expecting it to be disconnected. Mom, she answered on the first ring. Hello. Her voice hadn't changed. It's me, I said quietly. There was a sharp intake of breath. Christina. Oh, God. I could hear her crying, calling for Dad. Their voices tumbled over each other. Please come home. We need to see you. There's something you need to know. I can come next weekend, I heard myself say. The drive back to Millbrook was the longest of my life. Each mile marker brought back memories I'd tried so hard to bury. The town looked exactly the same, as if it had been frozen in time while I'd been away. Jane's car was in the driveway when I arrived. My heart hammered against my ribs as I walked up the familiar path to the front door. They were all waiting in the living room, Mom, Dad, and Jane. For years had changed them too. Mom's hair was grayer, Dad looked smaller somehow, and Jane was holding a sleeping baby, about 4 years old, on her lap. We found it, Mom said, her voice breaking. The ring, we found it. Dad stepped forward. We were replanting the roses last week, and there it was, tangled in the roots right where I knocked it off the bench that day. Jane finished, tears streaming down her face. The ring fell, and then we covered it with soil while planting. It's been there all this time, growing deeper with the roses. The revelation broke something in all of us. Suddenly, the living room was filled with raw, uncontrolled sobbing. Mom collapsed into Dad's arms, her whole body shaking. Dad's quiet composure finally cracked as tears streaming down his weathered face. Jane sank to her knees, her cries waking her sleeping son. And I, after 4 years of holding everything inside, of being strong, of surviving, I finally let go. The tears came in waves, years of pain and loneliness pouring out in gut-wrenching sobs. I'm so sorry, Chris, Jane choked out between gasps. I was horrible to you. cruel, unforgivable. I let my fear and Michael's anger cloud my judgment. I chose to believe the worst about my own sister. Mom reached for my hand, but stopped short, uncertain. "We failed you as parents," she whispered through her tears. "We should have believed in you, protected you. Instead, She couldn't finish. "Please," Jane pleaded, "tell us how to make this right. I'll do anything. We all will." I looked at them, these people who had once been my whole world, then my worst nightmare, and now I wasn't sure what they were. "I can't just pretend the last 4 years didn't happen," I said finally, wiping my eyes. "You didn't just accuse me. You condemned me, turned the whole town against me, threw me out with nothing but a gym bag and no place to go. What if—" Mom hesitated, then continued, "what if we saw someone, a family therapist, someone who could help us rebuild what we broke? Once a month," Dad added quickly, his voice still thick with emotion. "As long as it takes." It was with a start that I noticed the small youngster curled up on the couch, my nephew. He shared the black hair of Michael with Jane and her nose. An aunt had been absent from his life for a long time. "I am not relocating to Millbrook," I declared with conviction. "Portland is now my home." "Well done. Allies who never abandoned me when I needed them most." "We get it," Jane remarked. "We don't deserve to have you back in our lives, but if you're willing to try even a little—" I was hesitant to consent to my first vacation visit for 3 months. "Thank you." I enlisted Rachel's help as a support system. The dinner was uncomfortable since everyone was too shy to bring up certain subjects. Still, it was a beginning. In our sessions with Dr. Martins, our family therapist, she guides us through the more challenging topics. We discuss honesty and deceit, the burden of anticipation, and the poison of presumptions. When we leave her sessions, we may feel furious or upset, as if we have reopened old wounds. But we're getting better at listening to one another, little by little. My nephew Tommy, who is Jane's son, is the simplest part. Preschoolers don't hold resentment or guilt against their relatives. He just thinks of me as Aunt Chris, the one who teaches him to sketch and brings him books from Portland. His pure love connects our past selves to our potential selves. Roses that bloomed 4 years ago in Mom's garden are still blooming now. Whenever I see them, I can't help but reflect on how easily preconceptions and accusations may encase the truth, much like a ring in the earth. But the truth, like those roses, rises to the top in the end. When I left Millbrook with my gym bag and my heart broken, I was a different person. The ones that expelled me are different from these people. Healing, like gardening, requires time, patience, and continual attention, as we are all discovering. Even if some days are more challenging than others, we persevere.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maria, a pediatrician at Boston Children's Hospital, or as my mother, Helen, loves to call me, her greatest disappointment. Right now, I'm sitting in our living room, watching her swirl her expensive wine while dissecting my life choices for the 100th time. Philip is making a real difference in children's lives. Mom. His students adore him, I say, trying to keep my tone even. "Well, darling, teaching finger painting isn't exactly brain surgery," she quips, her lips curling into a practiced smile. "I just worry about your future." My father, Thomas, buries his head in the newspaper, his usual strategy for avoiding conflict. My younger sister, Rachel, nods along like a puppet, every word from Mom gospel truth. "At least consider introducing him to Roger at the country club," Mom continues. "He could help Philip find a real job in finance." "Mom, we've been over this," I say, gritting my teeth. "Philip loves teaching. It's his passion." My phone buzzes, offering a brief reprieve. It's a text from my best friend, Patricia. "Survived another Helen special?" I reply quickly. The usual, "My husband isn't good enough" routine. "Coming over later?" Her response is immediate. "You bet. Someone's gotta keep you sane." Later that evening, Philip comes home, his shirt streaked with glitter and glue, evidence of another day with his kindergartners. He's grinning ear to ear. The kids made solar system models today, he says, dropping his bag by the door. Little Tommy insisted Pluto should be included. All planets deserve love, he said. I smile, my heart full. This is the man my mother thinks isn't good enough. Oh, by the way, Philip adds casually, your mom called the school again. Wanted to know if there were any administrative positions open. Said teaching wasn't a long-term career choice. She what? It's okay, he says, shrugging. I've dealt with worse from helicopter parents. The doorbell rings. Patricia bursts in, carrying wine and takeout. Your mom's Mercedes was parked at the country club again, she announces, holding court with her minions. They were discussing your unfortunate marriage choices. Their words, not mine. I roll my eyes. Those women are as bad as she is. Patricia grins. Oh, and Mrs. Peterson called Philip charmingly working class at the gala. Philip chuckles, raising an eyebrow. At least I'm charming. Rachel calls later, her voice oozing with false concern. Jenny, Mom's really worried about your future. Maybe you should listen to her about Philip's career. She only wants what's best for you. What's best for me, I snap, is having a husband who's passionate about his work and treats me with respect. But what about status? Image? Mom says people are talking. Let them talk, Rachel. I'm not living my life for Mom's country club friends. Patricia raises her glass. To living life on your own terms. I glance at Philip, who's now playing with our cat, completely unfazed by my mother's latest antics. I feel a wave of gratitude, but also dread. This peace won't last. Mom's control is tightening, and something's brewing. Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house starts like every other gathering. Tense smiles, carefully measured words. Philip, ever the helper, is assisting Uncle Robert with his medication. Here you go, Uncle Robert, he says. These need to be taken with food. Uncle Robert beams. Such a kind young man. Reminds me of my late wife, always looking after others. Mom's voice cuts through the warm moment like ice. Yes, Philip certainly has a nurturing side. More like a nurse than a man, wouldn't you say? Helen, that's enough. Uncle Robert warns, his tone quiet but firm. Mom, stop it, I say sharply. Philip is helping Uncle Robert. What's wrong with that? Everything. Mom snaps, her voice rising. My daughter married beneath her. Now he's playing nursemaid at my Thanksgiving dinner. What will the neighbors think? Philip sets the pill bottle down carefully and stands. Helen, I respect that you're Maria's mother, but your comments are becoming inappropriate. Inappropriate? Mom's voice is shrill now. I'll tell you what's inappropriate. You undermining our family's standing in this community with your little finger painting career. Mother, please, I interject, moving to stand beside Philip, but he holds up a hand. No, let me finish, Mom says, eyes blazing. You strut around here like you belong, but you're nothing more than a glorified babysitter who trapped my daughter. Philip takes a deep breath. I think it's best if Maria and I leave. He turns toward the stairs, but before he can take a step, Mom lunges forward. Don't you dare walk away from me, she screams. Her hands connect with Philip's back, and the world seems to slow. He stumbles, then falls. The sickening thud of his body hitting the stairs echoes through the house, followed by a crack that chills me to the core. I rushed to Philip's side, my hands trembling as I cradled his head. He was unconscious, his arm bent at an unnatural angle. My breath caught in my throat. Oh my God, someone call an ambulance. I shouted, panic lacing my voice. He probably did it for attention, Rachel sneered, crossing her arms. Mom was just trying to talk to him. Talk to him? She pushed him down the stairs. Uncle Robert, you saw it. Uncle Robert nodded grimly, holding up his phone. I got it all, dear. Every second. He deserved it. My mother spat, her voice sharp with venom. Coming into my house, acting like he belongs here. I stared at her in disbelief. You're insane. You could have killed him. Maria, dear, you're overreacting, she said dismissively, waving a hand. He just tripped. Rachel stepped forward, trying to smooth things over. It's not that serious. Let's not make a scene. The sound of the approaching ambulance cut her off. The paramedics moved swiftly, stabilizing Philip and preparing to lift him onto the stretcher. As they carried him out, my mother had the audacity to mutter, well, at least now he has an excuse to stay home with the children. I turned to her, my voice shaking with rage. Stay away from us. Both of you. If Philip doesn't press charges, it'll be because he's a better person than anyone in this family. You can't be serious, Rachel exclaimed. We're your family. Not anymore, I said coldly. Uncle Robert, send me that video. As I climbed into the ambulance, my mother's voice echoed behind me. She'll come crawling back. She always does. But as I looked at Philip's unconscious face, I knew this time was different. Mom had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Later that week, I sat at my laptop staring at bank statements Uncle Robert had just sent me. My stomach turned as I pieced it together. These transfers, they're all going to offshore accounts, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She's been siphoning money for years. 30,000 from Uncle Robert's retirement fund. 50,000 from Dad's business. Patricia leaned over, her legal instincts kicking in. She had access to everything as a trusted family member. Classic elder financial abuse. I rubbed my temples, overwhelmed. My phone buzzed. It was Miss Martinez, Philip's school principal. Mrs. Walker has been calling us weekly, she said, claiming Philip is inappropriate with students. We've investigated every claim. They're all false. But we almost fired him last month because of the constant pressure. My blood ran cold. Mrs. Walker, my mother's best friend. Yes, she said she was concerned as a community member. I hung up, hands shaking. Patricia looked up from her notes. She tried to destroy his career. All those anonymous complaints. Your mom orchestrated them. Another message from Uncle Robert pinged. It was a video of my mother at a country club meeting. That kindergarten teacher is probably a predator, she said. Why else would a man want to work with children? I've called the school, but they're covering for him. Patricia's fingers flew over her keyboard. I'm documenting everything, the assault video, the financial records, the false reports. This is a pattern of abuse. Before I could respond, my father burst into the room, his face ashen. Maria, the business, he stammered. I just found out we're nearly bankrupt. Dad, sit down, I said. There's something you need to see. I showed him everything. The bank transfers, the videos, the lies. His face fell as he realized the truth. All these years, I thought I was losing my mind. Money disappearing. Records not matching. She said I was getting forgetful. Rachel called, her voice panicked. Jenny, everyone's ghosting me. Mrs. Peterson uninvited me from the charity board. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Rachel. The truth's coming out on its own. What truth? That you're destroying our family with lies? Check Mom's designer closet, I said. Those tags match the dates of Uncle Robert's missing money. There was silence on the line. That doesn't prove anything, Rachel snapped. Patricia interrupted, holding up her phone. Your mother's bridge club president just called. They'd seen the assault video. Helen's been removed from all committees. My father slumped into a chair, his shoulders sagging. The country club, our friends. Everything we built. No, Dad, you built it. Mom just stole and lied. Uncle Robert sent another text. Your mother's trying to access my accounts again. I've frozen everything. You can't do this to her. Rachel shrieked over the phone. Her reputation. Her reputation. I said coldly. What about Philip's career? Dad's business? Uncle Robert's retirement? Patricia placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. The DA will want to see this. Elder abuse, fraud, false reports. Rachel's voice softened, almost pleading. Maria, please, we can keep this private. Pay everyone back quietly. Like Mom kept quiet while spreading lies about Philip. My father stood in the living room, looking older than I'd ever seen him. He shook his head and said quietly, I need a lawyer. Use mine, Patricia offered immediately. He specializes in financial fraud. Another text buzzed on my phone, this time from Mrs. Peterson. Helen claims she's being framed, but we've all seen the evidence. I'm so sorry, Maria. I looked at Patricia. How long until this hits the social papers? She sighed. Given your mother's status, hours, maybe minutes. Rachel's voice came through the phone, still pleading. Maria, my friends won't even talk to me anymore. You have to fix this. No, Rachel. Mom made her choices. Now she can live with them. 3 years later, I sat on the couch in our living room, watching the news coverage of my mother's sentencing. 3 years for elder financial abuse and fraud. Philip walked in, adjusting his principal's badge, his formerly broken arm fully healed. You okay, honey? I smiled at him. Better than okay. It's finally over. My phone lit up. Rachel's 20th attempt to contact me this week. I stared at the screen as her voicemail played. Mom's asking for you. She's really changed. The prison counselor says so. I deleted the message and blocked her number. Patricia walked in, waving her phone. Did you see the charity auction listings? Your mother's entire designer collection is being sold to repay what she stole. She smirked. Karma's got a wicked sense of humor. Remember how she mocked your budget clothes? Now she's wearing orange jumpsuits. Not exactly Gucci. Uncle Robert called with updates. Your father's divorce is final. Helen tried to claim she deserved half the business. The business she bankrupted. The judge wasn't impressed. Oh, and Mrs. Peterson spotted her at the mall. Every high-end store turned her down. Guess Target doesn't care about country club memberships. The doorbell rang. It was my father, looking years younger. Maria, he said with a smile. I sold the house. I'm moving to Florida, starting fresh. That's wonderful, Dad, I replied. He hesitated, pulling out an envelope. Your mother sent this letter from prison. Says she's sorry. Wants to make amends. I took the unopened letter, walked to the shredder, and fed it through without hesitation. Some things can't be fixed. Patricia checked her news alerts. Oh, here's a juicy one. Your mom's social circle is imploding. They found out she was stealing from the charity foundation too. Those missing donation checks, they funded her Bermuda shopping sprees. The society papers are having a field day. Philip's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled. The kindergarten expansion project got approved. We're doubling enrollment next year. I beamed at him. Look at you, my husband, a successful educator. What would Mom say now? Philip chuckled. Probably nothing. Hard to criticize from behind bars. The TV flickered to a local news segment. Rachel's face appeared, tear-streaked and bitter. My sister turned everyone against us. We're victims too. I grabbed the remote and clicked it off. Enough of that. Philip wrapped me in a hug. Remember when your mother said I wasn't good enough for you? Now she's unfit for society, literally. Patricia raised her glass. To justice served cold with a side of karma. My father leaned back, a smile playing on his lips. I've got a date next week. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Oh, who's the lucky lady? A kindergarten teacher, he said, his tone teasing. We all burst out laughing at the irony. Later that evening, a final text came through from an unknown number. Darling, it's your mother. I'm being released soon. I've changed. Please. Block. I looked around at my real family, Philip, Patricia, Dad, and Uncle Robert, and felt a wave of peace. My mother hadn't just lost her money, status, and freedom. She'd lost the chance to share in the genuine happiness we'd found despite her. Philip, I said with a grin, let's have dinner at that little diner Mom said was beneath our class. The one where we had our first date. Perfect, he replied, taking my hand. After all, I had married the kindergarten teacher who became a principal, while she became a convict. Some people never learn, but their lessons can still teach us plenty. What would you do if you discovered a toxic family member wasn't just emotionally abusive, but also financially destructive and sabotaging your loved ones? Would you expose them or handle it privately to protect your family's dignity? Share your thoughts below.